Approximately 7.6 million dogs and cats enter shelters in the United States each year. Of those 7.6 million, 2.3 million won't make it out alive, ASPCA.org. According to the ASPCA, there are approximately 13,600 community animal shelters nationwide that work to rehome these animals. Many people are unaware or undereducated as to the work animal shelters do and problems they face. During my research, I focused to address the issues animal shelters face in regards to people being undereducated on the efforts they put forth and the impacts they have on so many animals' lives. I also interviewed 2 volunteers, an owner of a purebred animal, as well as a lead surgeon at an animal hospital ran by donations to help grasp different views that they each had on animal shelters and adoption. The lack of education regarding the adoption of animals through certain outlets has led to a distorted view of animals from shelters, which in turn causes closed-mindedness for many people to adoption, as well as little knowledge regarding spaying, neutering, and breeders. There is also a very prevalent stigma against animal shelters in regards to how they treat their animals, the quality of these animals, and other factors which contribute to the animal's unpopularity. The American Society for the Prevention of the Cruelty to Animals, or ASPCA, was the first animal welfare organization in the U.S. It was established in 1866, and because of their early work, anti-cruelty laws were passed, which addressed hoarding and mistreatment of animals as early as 1877. Some of the well-known local shelters include Casey Pet Project, Wayside Waves, Unleashed, and the Humane Society of Greater Kansas City. Within these organizations, both volunteers and employees work to promote the well-being of homeless, abused, and neglected cats and dogs, as well as a variety of other pets. These nonprofit organizations rely heavily on funding donations and fundraisers to compensate for overhead staff and basic supplies for the animals. The methods for rescuing and caretaking vary at each shelter, and basic supplies for the animal. The methods for rescuing and caretaking vary, but Unleashed Pet Rescue is one of the more influential shelters in the Kansas City area, and I chose to speak with one of their volunteers, which was a good friend of mine, Rachel Yearsley. During her interview, I asked her to elaborate on the current rescue process, and she just explained that Unleashed works to pull dogs from animal control and high kill shelters in rural Missouri areas. Every week, volunteers share posts of dogs that need foster families, and this process is normally only done when there is space available or available families looking to foster a pet. Last year, Unleashed saved over 1,500 animals through foster families, and right now they can actually hold up to 200 dogs and 40 cats at a time, but with the help of foster families, they can hold up to 50 more or more in a month. So volunteers who choose to help foster pets at Unleashed save space for potential surrenders as well as for homeless and abandoned animals. The fosters help the issue of overcrowding in animal shelters, but they don't take it completely away. And it has become a really serious concern. When shelters become overcrowded, they are unable to take care or take in new animals. The animals that are boarded live in tight quarters, may share kennels, have limited playtime, and can develop behavioral disorders, and after a certain period of time, they could be euthanized. Angel's Pet Express works to do whatever they can to keep every animal alive at the lowest cost possible. Every dollar the company brings in is spent on the veterinary care of animals rescued, and Angels is located in Savannah, Missouri, and has done wonderful things for many animals and pet owners. I learned about Angels through my parents when our family dog Bruce became ill. After visiting his primary vet and doing several x-rays and ultrasounds, they found out that he had a foreign body and he was going to need surgery. The average cost for surgery in the Kansas City metro area is around $4,000. My parents did not want to pay that, and they also did not want to get rid of our dogs. So we did a little more research, and we found Angels through a friend, and they actually performed his surgery and kept him overnight for 4 nights for $500. Dr. Dozier, the lead surgeon at Angels, who performed Bruce's surgery, said their mission is to keep every animal alive at the lowest cost possible. Another local organization who sponsors the welfare of homeless pets is Kansas City Pet Project, and their establishment began in January of 2012 in efforts to find homes for animals who otherwise would be abandoned, abused, or euthanized. There was an abundance of pets in Kansas City area who were either homeless, lost, or procreating animals that could not be properly cared for. Prior to Kansas City Pet Project's existence, there were several animal shelters in the KC metro area, but only a few select were no-kill shelters. Their mission is to end the killing of healthy and treatable pets by using the most progressive and life-saving programs and promoting effective animal control policies. Throughout their 4 years of nonprofit work, they have evolved and utilized the available resources to better serve the animals in the community. A few examples include them working with Kansas City Royals and Charlie Hustle. Through the events they've held, Kansas City Pet Project has become consistently successful in raising awareness in animal adoption. Since 2015, they ended with a 93.4% live release rate, the highest in the history of Kansas City, Missouri, and adoptions have increased 146% since they began operating in the shelters in 2012. The fundraisers, charity events, and consistent social media updating is working in their favor to help homeless animals in the Kansas City area. Breeding can be extremely dangerous and unsanitary as well. Breeders who inadvertently increase animal population by selling puppies for a substantial profit are looked down upon by shelters. According to the PETA.org, all breeders intentionally and accidentally fuel the animal overpopulation crisis every time someone purchases a puppy or kitten instead of adopting from an animal shelter. Homeless animals lose their chance of finding a home. The difference between shelters and other pet resources lies in the shelter's focus on giving pets a good home for no profit as opposed to puppy mills, pet stores, and in-home breeding using female animals to reproduce for a profit. Yearsley added that breeders take away business from animal shelters, and she stated that they have so many amazing animals that need a home. The animals in shelters are not any less valuable or capable of those purchased through breeders. Keegan White, another volunteer that I conducted a shorter interview with, wanted people to consider adopting from shelters instead of breeders because, in her words, you can't expect breeders to inform you on anything. She then followed that with expanding on a short story of her friend who got their dog from a breeder, and the breeder didn't tell her anything. They mainly just wanted to get rid of the dog and make their money, and she shortly after realized that she wasn't allowed to have that kind of breed or that size of dog in her apartment or her living quarters, and she had to take matters into her own hands by that time. And she had stated that people don't act like adopting or buying a pet is as easy as it sounds, implying that more cats and dogs would have loving homes and would be more hesitant in some cases not to take on too much for their living situation. Going back to Rachel Yearsley, when she was growing up, her family had 2 purebred Labrador retrievers that they bought from breeders for hundreds of dollars each. It was all I ever knew, she went on to say, as she placed a certain stereotype on dogs in shelters as dirty or broken. Yearsley was introduced in volunteering for those dogs when a friend invited her to help walk dogs at Unleashed. She was motivated by her experience, going on to say that she formed a strong connection with the animals at Unleashed, and within 2 weeks, she had signed up to foster a puppy. Rachel explained that her decision to foster came from learning that when you foster, you are helping out the shelter because most of the time they're at maximum capacity. So when they get in more dogs or cats than they can hold, they rely on foster families to volunteer and let dogs or cats stay until they're adopted. She ended up falling in love with her foster puppy and ended up adopting her, and her name is Zenyatta. She was a Great Dane and Rhodesian Ridgeback mix, and she ended up explaining that she will never she will never buy from a breeder again, but that she will only adopt from shelters. Each year, about 7.6 million pets enter animal shelters nationwide. Of that number, approximately 2.7 million are 1.4 are dogs and 1.2 million are cats are adopted, while approximately 2.7 of 1.4 million dogs and 1.3 million cats are euthanized. 649,000 pets who enter as strays return to their owners, and approximately 549,000 dogs and only 100,000 cats. The remainder of these animals mostly stay in the shelter or are transferred between shelters. Most people do not look to shelters when adopting a pet because they have not done the research. In fact, 40% of pet owners learned about their pet through word of mouth, so not much research is done at all prior to purchasing them. In Yearsley's words, you can't expect people to know what animal shelters have to offer. I myself had no idea until I was exposed to the community. Animals adopted typically come chipped, spayed, or neutered, flea and tick treated, dewormed, and up to date with all vaccines, and having passed all overall wellness exam. Depending on the shelter, the price to adopt is roughly $100. You can't even get your dog spayed or neutered for under $100 unless you go to a shelter, is what Yearsley explained. However, some people who have had pets from both animal shelters and breeders will still choose a breeder based on different circumstances. For example, a good friend of mine, Sean Strahl, I interviewed him, and he is the owner of a purebred German Shepherd. He sat down with me to explain why he chose to buy his dog from a breeder opposed to adopting from a shelter. He wanted to point out that he believed that animal shelters do great things and that it's just based on preference. When he was looking into getting his dog, he did look through a few shelters, and a German Shepherd one to be exact, in the Kansas City area, and he had stated that he just didn't find the right match for him. Both of his childhood dogs were adopted through shelters by his family, and he had said that he believes that a way a dog behaves is shaped by their owner and how they're trained. He said that he believed that the owner makes a huge impact on the personality of the animal, implying that some shelter dogs are more inclined to have behavioral problems because of where they came from. Nationally, there are thousands of small groups, organizations, and communities that come together to promote education on shelters and becoming a pet owner. When animals end up in shelters by surrender, it is not their fault. They have no control of any situation, and only people to blame are the owners who bought them from before educated on all responsibilities a pet brings. With the vast numbers of animals in shelters, it is obvious that the education on adopting or buying an animal is necessary before finalizing the decision. With the increasing success rates of a highly viewed organization like Kansas City Pet Project, there are high hopes that the public will be reached in a way to allow them to feel more comfortable in getting involved. Continuing the expansion in the Kansas City metro, it will continue the rise of animal lives saved. The more involved, the more educated one becomes, and helps spread the word on benefits of adopting foster animals.